Good morning. I'm Gertie Spencer, and I'm a board member at the Heritage Museum of Montgomery County. Today is July the 7th, 2011. We're here with Edith Clanton in her beautiful shop, and you'll have to come see all of her beautiful things one day. Edith, I understand you were born here in our county. Tell us about it, okay?
I was born in Conroe, right down the street here, a long time ago. July the 22nd, 1918.
Wow.
Pretty good. Wow.
Well, you're
In my grandmother's home.
And when did your family come to Montgomery County?
I think they came in the late 1880s from Alabama by wagon, and they had 10 children, 6 girls and 4 boys. And they stopped a while in Montgomery and near Bear Bryn. I know you've heard of that.
My grandmother was born there.
Where the bears roamed too. And then they came on over here. I guess word gets around and they travel, to new places. And of course, timber was a big thing over here. I think we were in maybe the edge of the big thicket, I'm not sure. But they first stopped there around Bear Bend, and I often wonder, how did they all sleep and things like that, traveling? But then they came on over here, and I don't know how much acreage they bought, but I just don't know that one, and settled here. And my grandparents built a house right down the street there from here.
Well, let me tell the people where you're located. Your shop is located on Cable Street, and at the end of Cable Street is where your grandparents live.
Yeah.
Well, let's tell everybody where Bear Bend was. If you go out to the lake, where Walden's Club, right north of that, in the middle of the lake, was Bear Bend.
And they did have bears out there.
I know it. They hunted bears out there, and but I just wanted everybody to know where Bear Bend was.
Uh-huh.
And of course, when the lake came in, there was just a bunch of farmers that lived there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And all right, tell us about your childhood and where you went to school.
Well, I think I was born in my grandparents' house. My mother and daddy lived here, and I had a brother who was older than me, John Bedecker. And you want me to give the date?
No, you don't have to.
And I grew up, well, after, I don't know whether I think we lived somewhere else and rented until they were able to build this house that we have right here, which was built in 1922, I think. And we moved into it, and I think I was about 3 years old. We have some pictures of it. And I grew up here. And
okay, that was your grandparents on your mom's or your dad's side?
Mother's.
Your mother's. Where were your other grandparents? Were they here or
No,
out of county?
They were over near Caldwell. My dad
Right.
was raised over in Caldwell County. And then he stayed with his mother passed away, and there was a little girl too born, but someone took the little girl, and he stayed with his father for years. But then I don't know what brought him over, unless he was just looking for work. And
you told me earlier that you went to the Bennett School here in Conroe.
Right, he was a very fine man. And he was in the timber business also. I think one thing, he did the things they put on the railroad track, ties.
The ties. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And he also was a landowner and a well-liked person. And they named the whole J.O.H. Bennett, his whole name, school. And I went to school there, and first though, my mother went there.
Oh, wow.
And I have pictures of that. And then after Professor Anderson was also the superintendent then. And after she graduated from there, she went to Huntsville and got a teaching certificate, which I didn't think didn't take much doing. and came back and taught at different places around here.
Well, did they have a 12 grades?
No,
So you graduated at what?
I graduated when I still had 11.
11.
Mm-hmm.
And you stayed in Conroe. What did you do after you graduated from high school?
Well, I looked for a job, and first I worked at, Everett's had a store. They had a grocery store and a hardware store and a clothing store. It was on the, going toward the railroad track on the east side, and that was quite an experience for me, learning how to do all things, including catching chickens in the coop in the back. And one day I was really dumb about that, but Dr. Bartell came in. He was right up the street there, and he said, I want to get, do you have any white rocks? And I said, no, but we have some Plymouth rocks. So, and he just died laughing about that. I didn't know
And your
that.
second job was with a doctor here in Conroe?
Yes, had a real good neighbor friend, the Cables, and they were friends with Dr. Falvey and his family. And one day he was disappointed in the ladies that was working for him. It said every time he left, well, it seemed like she went downstairs to the drugstore, said, I'm going to replace her. And Miss Cable said, I know just the girl for you.
Well, it wasn't
That was
lucky.
me.
And you said you worked there 6 years?
Yes, and they...
And what were your duties?
Everything. Well, first though, this was up over a drugstore, and then they built a beautiful clinic over on the east side, or north side, and it burned.
The north side of the courthouse?
Yes, and but it was a real pretty. And the nice thing about it, patients going to a doctor, they had to climb stairs, and that's pretty hard on a sick person. They made these stairways smaller. They didn't have to step in wider. That it was easy for a person to get up there. And I did everything you can think of up there, from receptionist to helping them do work in the examining rooms. And we had a wonderful lady, her salon, that had graduated from Scott and White, and she also was could give anesthetics, and so we had these 3 little patient rooms that they minor things could recover in, and she gave the anesthetic, and sometimes they used me to come back and run that suction machine, which was a bad chore.
So they did minor surgery.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that a doctor's office had
Well,
that type.
everything wasn't quite so hard to do back then.
Okay.
You just did it.
Okay. And you worked there 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
and you married
Kelly Wise.
Kelly Wise. What
He-
year?
he-
What year or around what time?
Well, I think at that time, maybe the country sensed there was trouble in brewing, and they had you either enlist or be drafted. So he enlisted and started his training at Ellington Field.
For World War II.
Yeah, but
And did you marry before he went in the service?
no, it was after that, but it wasn't long after that. We married with another couple that we were good friends with, Bill Dean and Florence Damuth, and we didn't exactly have a double wedding. They married first and we married second.
Well, that's neat.
But we had a one-night honeymoon in Houston.
Oh, okay.
And then everybody
Then you had
was-
to go back and go to work.
Go back and go to work.
Oh, wow. And your family was in what kind of business? Your dad was with the railroad.
Yes, he worked for the railroad most of his life, and unless you got cut off, and that during the Depression he did get cut off, and we had moved to Palestine and left the house wide open. Nobody bothered anything, and it was 8 weeks, and all of a sudden the bottom fell out, and I'm probably getting out of my sequence here.
That's okay. That's the Depression you're talking about
Yes,
now.
yes. So we had a cousin that had a big truck, and he had moved us up there. So we got him word to come get us and move us back. So we moved back and started doing anything that could be done, especially gardening and things like that. And I think my daddy got a job night watching uptown by just going by and shaking the doorknobs, and
Yeah.
see if they were open or not. And he wore a pistol, but he never did shoot it. And they used to raise a couple of hogs and would kill them in the cold weather. So a cold spell came along. We don't have any of those anymore, I don't think. And they got the wash pot going, and everything. And so he drew his pistol to shoot the pig. Click, click, nothing happened.
Oh, my.
So they had to do the best they can, knock them in the head, and then scrape them. And neighbors came and helped, and then they got part of the pig, hog, and out of it. But
Well, tell us some of the things that you did when you were a child living in this area. I think you told me one about there was a pond across the street.
oh, we had a tank over there that we loved to crawfish in, and one day the neighborhood kids, and we noticed some big eyes sticking up over there, and so we went a little closer, and it was an alligator.
Wow.
And scary, So we got our heads together and came up here and got a hook, a line, a metal thing about like that with a hook and a big old hunk of bacon, and went back down there in a strong cord. Threw it out there, and he swallowed it. And you never saw such flouncing around in your life. It scared us to death. Did me anyway. And finally we drug him up to the house, and tied him to a tree and didn't dare get around his tail, that's dangerous. And I don't know what happened to him, but I'm sure my dad took care of the situation. Got rid of him.
Well, y'all were brave little souls.
Well, we sure were, weren't we?
And another thing you told me about was your escapade with a wild hog.
That
Gotta
was
tell
at the Grand Lake, which was a great place to go. And
That's where Strake Boy Scout Camp is?
yes.
Okay.
And we went out, a group of people went on a picnic out there to eat, and I love doing boy things, and I had a lasso, like that. Well, I lassoed a hog, a wild hog, and the way he went, and I was just holding and hollering, help, 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 come help. So they all came over and got the lasso off the hog, and then we ate, yes, after that.
And tell us about the streets and the utilities that you had in your home when you were growing up.
We had electricity, all right, but we didn't have indoor plumbing. I mean, a toilet. And as soon as Mr. Drake brought in oil here, well,
Everybody
got rich, and we had all those things happen. They you got your streets paved, and then we were able to put the indoor plumbing that we needed.
The sewer lines came
lines
in at that
there,
time.
and that was a blessing.
What about a telephone?
Well, we had telephone. You had long rings and short rings, and we always, if it was somebody else's number,
So you were on a party line.
used very carefully, didn't breathe into it, and you lifted the receiver,
And
listened
listened.
to what was going on. Well, we weren't too bad about it.
Remember, somebody was listening to you when you were talking on it.
Probably.
No, me.
And then they had an operator, up in the building, and if you always knew who the operator was, and you'd call her and you say, do you know where so-and-so is right now? And they'd say, yeah, she was over such and such place. And so that's how you got in touch with her.
Well, I know Fraser Street, you said you remember it before it was Highway 75.
Mm-hmm.
So when Highway 75 was dedicated, and it was the main highway from Houston to Dallas, how did that change life in your neighborhood?
What it did, it came down, but it also turned, where the Flying Red Horse station,
Yeah.
It turned toward town and then circled town and went on out. the end of town out there, and you got onto some shell roads, and of course they're terrible with the holes in them and
Sure.
all that. And that's how you went to Houston, bumping all the way down there. And there was very little to see. We could see a farmhouse halfway there, and sometime you had to wait while they drove their cattle across the road to graze. And if you were coming back from Houston, see, same thing might happen to you. They were taking them back to be milked, you know.
Well, this was all residential area. Did you see some businesses open along the highway? Do you remember
Not very many.
Service stations or
Not very many.
cafes or anything?
No.
Okay. I know there was I called it a dairy, and you call it a pasteurizing plant across the street here.
The Gendrips had.
The Gendrips had that, and they delivered the milk.
They moved here from another state.
North Carolina, I believe.
They were Mormons. It's a Mormon state. I can't remember which it was. But they moved to Willis and had a dairy farm up there. And first they delivered milk in Willis. And then they decided to enlarge, I guess. So they built this pasteurizing plant right down the street here where Cable Street runs. And they had, by that time, my mother was renting every room in this house. And there was 3 brothers here from Center, Texas that they hired, and they all stayed in one room. And my brother, she put him in there with them.
Well, tell the folks why she was renting rooms. It was the oil boom, right?
Yes, and we weren't used to having any money. And I mean, we rented every one. I think this room in particular was by itself. And, you know, someone hired Mr. Blumhester, that's the architect of the theater.
The theater and
and
some of the homes in Conroe after the oil.
Well, they lived here in this one room until they could find a place.
Oh,
That's
really?
how crowded it was. And we became real good friends. She was a wonderful person. Well, he was too. And she had a beautiful voice, and she sang a lot. But they finally found an apartment, and it took a while to build the theater because it's a beautiful
And
theater.
then he built the Madeley's home, D.A. Madeley,
Did he?
and then the Freemans. Well, he was the architect.
Yeah.
He was the architect
Yeah.
for those.
Well, I
And the
didn't
Evans,
remember that.
The Evans home
Yeah.
over by the high school.
But they moved away, though, sometime or other, and I kind of lost track of
Right, right.
them. But they were wonderful people.
And the Depression. Everybody in the United States was suffering, and then here we have an oil boom, and there were plenty of jobs. I was told that Conroe had 3,000 people, and
Oh.
within 5 or 6 weeks there were
10,000
15,000 men that had come here to find a job.
And you know, before that, we didn't have paved streets. So this big trucks carrying all the pipe and everything went through the streets, and you had to wear boots to town,
Ruts.
or you sunk in the mud
Right.
to go across to the other side. But, you know, as time went on, things changed, of course.
And during World War II, the government built an airport and manned it with naval personnel. Do you remember that era?
I didn't know much about it, but I did know it happened. It seemed like Bob Laws was in charge of that.
Could have been, because he had a hand in.
But the big thing was when Mr. Strike drilled out there. You know, he brought in a whale, but he also one cratered on him, and it went straight down.
Right.
And to this day, the derrick's still down in there. And one of our brave boys, you know, from school, we went out swimming, you know. Well, I wouldn't have done it, but, you know, they like to brag.
Right.
And it's still out there.
I'll be.
And there's all kinds of things in it by now.
And for fun, you can't think of any other fun things you did when you were a small child or a teenager?
Pretty good person.
I know you're a good person.
No, I'm joking. Well, I know one time where the old J.O.H. Minute School was, Somebody put a whole buggy up on top there, and I'm not sure that the donkey wasn't with it. So they did all kinds of crazy
things. I know we talked the other day about canning. During the Depression, the government would set up canning areas in a little house or building that was available. And tell us about, did your mama take things down, or did you be canned?
We had a canner ourselves, because we had a garden, and we were able to can ourselves. You could do it by cans, or you could do it by the water jars.
Yeah.
But I know she decided to make some ketchup one time, and I was given the job to stir that ketchup, and don't you dare stop or the scorch,
Right.
So I had to stand by and do that. And she just did everything. She used to raise sweet peas too, and they were beautiful.
And you married and had 2 children?
We had 3.
3 children.
Mm-hmm. 2 sons and a daughter.
And do they still live close by?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, aren't you fortunate?
Yes.
Well, that's good. And you lost your husband when he was, in his 40s?
I can't remember exactly, but he had served, though, in a service.
Right.
And then we were back home. My mother saved the house here for us because she knew that in time we'd get out of service, and I think we spent 4.5 years. And I had 1 child and then 1 on the way, and I asked him, how many points do you have? It took so many down. He counted them up, and he said, enough to get out. And I said, well, bye, I'm going home. So I came back, and then it took time for him to muster out, and then he joined us. And I thought he would have trouble getting a job because, when I left Conroe, nobody had a job. But Superior had hired a lot of older men while everybody was gone to service, and so they began to replace them with the younger men, and so he worked out there a long time.
Superior Oil out on 1488.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They had those shifts too. 3 different shifts, a week of this and a week of that, and that's a killing thing when you take those different hours.
So, after your husband died, you continued to live here in this building?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you married a gentleman that was a real historian, didn't you? He loved history.
Yeah.
And you did too, of course.
Yeah.
Russ Clanton.
Right.
And when did you open your shop here? How long have you had it?
I first had a janitor supply business.
Oh, I remember.
For 10 years.
Fraser.
Yes.
I forgot about
that.
Well, this is way more glamorous, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it grew. And Russ had a filling station right below it that he sold gasoline, or leased it out, I think. But after... Okay, where did I leave off?
I can't help you. Sorry.
I was trying to think of...
He had a service station, and then you had...
Well, he rented that. He didn't... but we saw... I had a chemical company for 10 years, and finally, they had the gentleman that called on me were a college degree person representing the paper company. And I just happened to mention one day that I'd really like to sell. And they took me seriously, and they got their heads together, and they said, "Were you really interested?" And I said, "Yeah." I had salesmen too, believe it or not. And it was not an easy job. And so they agreed to buy it, and had it all worked out, but I didn't tell my salespeople about it until I called a meeting one night, and they were used to doing that. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary, and then it wasn't anything out of the ordinary for the salespersons to be there. But anyway, when everybody was seated and these guys were there, and I said, "Well, I want to introduce y'all to your new boss." So,
Well, did you take some time off, or did you?
I did a little bit, but I knew I wasn't gonna stay put.
Yeah, you're still working, aren't you?
Well,
Your shop's open 5 days a week?
Well, there's no certain time anymore.
You just open when you feel like it?
Well, I used to have some regular help, but
Well, your inventory is just gorgeous.
Well, thank
Crystal and china
Yeah.
and all kind of beautiful things.
it was just that I really enjoyed looking at them. It wasn't. I was the kind of person that wanted to possess everything. It was just the beauty of old things, and there's a lot to learn too. And I was green about that, and it took long. Don't know everything yet, but it's been really a fun trip.
And your collection of photographs of over the years here locally is a marvelous collection.
Uh-huh.
And you've saved them for future, and
Well,
they're
that's
going to
a
be
habit of
valuable.
not ever throwing anything away. That's what it is.
But we're so fortunate to have had you here in Conroe for so long, and all the things you've done and been involved in. We appreciate you letting us come today and visit.
Well, good.
And I think we'll have some photos of some of the things in your shop if you want to get up and walk around and point out some things. The photographer will be glad to follow you around.
Okay.
And
Well,
look at your
everything's
shop.
for sale. So take what you like. And then ask me about it if you want. No, I'm joking. There is a lot of beautiful things here. And I think that's what attracted me. I had a good friend, Louise Pace, and her daddy was a tax collector, I think. And we used to eat and spend the night with one another. And I remember, like, if I spend the night over there on Saturday night and Sunday, her mother, they always had a nice meal. But she had a china cabinet, and I would stand there and just look at these pretty things in there. I wasn't wanting them.
You just admiring them.
Yeah, and I think
Well,
I
you
guess
have plenty
I
of
think that I've always done that, and so.
Well, thank you so much.
Well,
and
thank you for
I think we're
coming.
going to take a tour of your building now
Okay.
and look at some of your pretty things.
Okay.